Hello, Alva. Welcome to today's Daily Bible Bites. We are in Genesis in chapter 41, and so a little bit more of Joseph and dreams. It'll be lovely. Hope this finds you well today. And here's what we've got. Now, it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile. And lo, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed on the marsh grass. Then, behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and gaunt, and they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows, and then Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep again, and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. And then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now, in the morning, his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. We had a dream on the same night. He and I, each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now, a Hebrew youth was with us there, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we related them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream, and just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. And he restored me in my office, but he hanged him. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. And Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, In my dream, behold, I was standing at the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile, and they grazed in the marsh grass. Lo, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, and such as I had never seen for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the lean and the ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before. And then I awoke. I saw in my dreams, and behold, 7 ears full and good came up on a single stalk, and lo, 7 ears with withered and thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprouting up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 good ears. And then I told it to the magicians, but there was no one here who could explain it to me. So Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt, and after them 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. So, the abundance will be unknown in the land because of that subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now, as for the meaning of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. Now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land. let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain and food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it, and let the food become a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all of his servants. Then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and according to your command all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." And then Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put the gold necklace around his neck. And he had him ride in his second chariot, and they proclaimed before him, "Bow the knee," and he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Though I am Pharaoh, yet without your permission no one shall raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh named Joseph Zaphenath Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went forth over the land of Egypt. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and went through all the land of Egypt. And during the 7 years of plenty, the land brought forth abundantly. So he gathered all the food these 7 years, which occurred in the land of Egypt. And he placed the food in the cities, and he placed in every city the food from its own surrounding fields. And thus Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until he stopped measuring it, for it was beyond measure. Now, before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." He named the second one Ephraim, for he said, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction." When the 7 years of plenty which had been in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph said, then there was a famine in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So when the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread, and Pharaoh said to the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, whatever he says to you, you shall do." When the famine was spread over all the face of the earth, then Joseph opened all the storehouses, and he sold to the Egyptians, and the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. The people of all the earth came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in all the earth. Isn't that a very famous story about Joseph interpreting dreams for Pharaoh? Genesis chapter 41. And then we'll read a portion of the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 14. And here's how that goes. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the news about Jesus, and said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him." For when Herod had John arrested, he bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip. For John had been saying to him, "It is not lawful for you to have her." Although Herod wanted to put him to death, he feared the crowd, because they regarded John as a prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before them, and it pleased Herod, so that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Having been prompted by her mother, she said, "Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist." Although he was grieved, The king commanded it to be given because of his oaths, because of his dinner guests. And he sent and he had John beheaded in prison. And his head was brought out on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. His disciples came and took away the body and buried it, and they went and reported it to Jesus. Now, when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself, and when the people heard of this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion on them and healed their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, This place is desolate, and the hour is already late, too late to send the crowds away, so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said to them, They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. And they said, We only have five loaves and 2 fish. And he said, Bring them here to me. Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up toward heaven, he blessed the food, and breaking the loaves, he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds, and they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. And we'll stop there at the end of verse 21 of chapter 14 in the Gospel according to Matthew. 2 stories about God's provision for people in miraculous ways, coming from 2 different places in the Bible. In the Old Testament, Genesis chapter 41, and in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 14. This is the God who wants you to know him. He's revealed himself in his word, and I hope that you've been blessed by today's Bible Bite. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow.